welcome back. It feels like forever since we sat down and did some proper makeup. Because we've had Halloween, it just feels like I've not sat down and actually spoke to you guys in ages. So I'm looking forward to creating a look today. I'm using a new skincare regime ahead of the wedding. I know I was going to stick just to Dr. Sam's. I bought some of the products just because I love the kind of glow that it gives to the skin, and it's also a really great way to target oily skin. I'm more of a oily combination. I get really oily through the T-section, so I want to kind of like try and work on that, as well as this kind of like orange peel effect to the skin. So I might start having quite dry skin for the next couple of months. It might be a bit of a pain with recording and creating looks, but we'll just see how it goes. This is the broad spectrum sunscreen, but it's also a primer. So this is the sunscreen and the primer in one. It is slightly thicker than an ordinary sunscreen, but it has that primer effect to it, so it gives a beautifully smooth finish to the skin. I would really hydrate your skin underneath this, because if you have quite dry skin, you might not necessarily like this unless your skin's really hydrated. And it's a really lovely base for makeup, so that's what I've got on. I'm going to use the Eldridge foundation today, but I'm going to start with her Elevated Glow underneath, because it has that ingredient in it where it really smooths the skin and tightens the skin, which also her foundation has in as well. I want to put this underneath, just on the high points of the face. So I'm just going to tap that in with my finger. So as this settles on the skin, you want to give it about 3 minutes before you apply your foundation. And it just starts to kind of tighten the skin underneath, and then you get this lovely glow underneath your foundation. The one I'm using is Crystal Nebula. So that's just on the high points of the cheekbones. You can also apply this over your foundation for added glow later, but it's a really nice base to put under, especially on this area, because we get little smile lines. So last week I popped into London for a couple of events, and I went past Covent Garden to run into the Eldridge House of Eldridge pop-up. It's beautiful, as you would expect from Lisa. So I picked up her foundation. I actually got some swatches and I shade matched myself to number 11, but I wanted to see what they would shade match me at, and it was 11. So this is the bottle. It's a little bit different. I mean, it's still a foundation bottle as you'd expect, but the idea is that it lays flat, so you can put it down on the table, which is a little bit more convenient than trying to get this to stand upright. If you want it upright, you can just pop it back in the holder, which is quite nice. Now with this foundation, you only need a very small amount. A little does go a long way, and that's really dependent on the coverage that you want. You can build it up and apply 2 layers. If you want more like a tinted effect to the skin, just use half a pump. I'm going to use this brush by Makeup Forever. It's one of my favourites when it comes to flat brushes, which I don't really reach for very often, but flat brushes were recommended for this foundation by Lisa. So this one is the Makeup Forever 108 straight brush. It's a really beautiful tip to it. So I'm going to start with the one pump, but you can apply it with your fingers, which is my favourite way to apply the foundation. So I'm going to start in the middle of my face and work outwards. Now, as you know, I always have a little bit more colour on my chest, but this is still a really good colour for me even now, and then I can warm up the skin with some bronzer. So I believe there's 40 shades available in this foundation. It was around £44, I think. So shade 11 is in the light medium category, neutral golden undertone, which works perfect for me right now. My face has no colour whatsoever, so I won't be any lighter than this. I'll just get a little bit darker in this foundation during the summer months. So as I said, this has an ingredient in it which I think is called Film Excel, if I can remember, and it has this tightening effect to the skin. So I'd really recommend going to check out Lisa's description of the foundation. She has an in-depth video on the foundation, and she'll obviously do it much more justice than I will, but it basically forms like a mesh on the skin, and that creates this tightening and smoothing effect. It's very, very clever. Like the Elevated Glow, the highlighters, after about 3 minutes it will start to tighten the skin. Having tried it a couple of times now with different bases, you really can change it up to your preference. So if you want more of a matte finish, then use something that's more mattifying underneath. And I feel like it doesn't really need powdering unless you've got something super rich underneath. Around my pores, I like to mix it up by using my finger and the brush. I like to push it over the pores because it looks more natural. And then kind of just like stipple over with my brush after. But I just feel like with any foundation, it looks so much better when you use your fingers over it first. I'm going to take a little bit more just through the centre of the face. And again, you can go with your fingers if you prefer, you don't have to use a brush. So that is kind of like 1.5 layers The second layer is just through the centre of the face, and as you can see, my skin tone is much more even. It's so natural. So today I'm going to use the Rose Quartz palette by Huda Beauty. There's some beautiful colours. This one is kind of like blue and pink. So moving on to brows, I'm using my Westbarn Co brow pen, and the shade I'm using is Roots. Over the years, you've seen me using my little tin of soap brows, and this is the same company, and they've extended their brow offerings into products such as these brow pens, which you know I absolutely love. The shade I'm using is Roots, which is a little bit dark for me in ordinary daylight, and it works in studio lighting, but I think for daylight I'm going to need to try and get my hands on the shade Brew. I love how thin the tip is, the ink lasts all day long, and as you can see, it just gives the perfect finish. Moving on to eyes, I'm taking my ZOEVA 220 Luxe Grand Shader brush, and I'm dipping it into this shade called Precious, which is a matte finish, and as you can see, it's a cool toned medium taupe shade. It has a very subtle purple undertone, and I'm taking that over the entire lid up towards the eyebrow bone, and I am extending it out towards the tail of my eyebrow before going in with a clean blending brush to buff out the seams. I really can't recommend that ZOEVA brush enough. Look how quick and easy that was to cover my entire lid. I'm taking that same shade underneath my lower eyelashes, making sure it goes all the way towards the inner corner and connecting it with the outer corner of the top lid. This is another ZOEVA brush, and I believe this is the 137. Going back to the palette, I'm taking this shade called Abundance, which is a metallic finish in a dark lavender tone. I'm going to spritz my brush using a setting spray. This one is the All Nighter spray by Urban Decay. Damp bristles always tend to make metallic eyeshadows look a little bit more intense. This is going over the mobile lid, but I'm kind of leaving the very centre of the lid because I'm going to apply a different colour here. So I'm making sure it goes on the inner corners and the outer corner, and I'm taking it up to where the eye naturally creases. And I layered this colour twice. Next from the palette, I'm taking the shade Cosmic Love, which is a sparkle finish, and this is a flip colour. As you can see, when you move your head around, you get both blue and purple hues. There's no denying this colour is stunning, and ordinarily sparkles are a little bit of a harder payoff than a creamy metallic. However, all of her eyeshadows in this palette are so creamy. Next I'm taking this shade called Self Love, which is a frost finish. This frost is less sparkly than the other two shades that we've used, but still very beautiful, and it's a light pink with an almost kind of soft gold shot through it. I have dampened my finger to apply this just because I want it to stick over the metallic, and this is going right on the very centre of the lid, and it just adds some dimension to the colour. As you can see, this is the colour on its own over bare skin, which is going on the very inner corner of the eyes. So it's this beautiful light pink with that very subtle kind of almost mother of pearl but without the blue. Now I'm going to apply some eyeliner. This is a waterproof gel eyeliner by Anastasia Beverly Hills. It is in the shade Black, but we're only going to apply it just over halfway along our waterline so it doesn't close up the eye too much. And I'm also working it between my lower eyelashes, pulling it down onto the skin just below, and then I'm going to use the small detailer brush that we used earlier by ZOEVA to soften that and blend it into the skin to create a smoke. You could also use a nice plum shade, but try and go for something that's slightly cooler rather than too warm, nothing too red. I'm also going to use this to tightline the eye because I feel like it just makes the eye look that much more smoky, and because it is a waterproof eyeliner, I found it didn't print down. As long as it has time to kind of set in place, it's fine. I'm also going to add a black to my top lid using the Caviar Stick by Laura Mercier. This is in the shade Tuxedo, which is a black. So I'm just keeping this to the outer third of the top lid, so you really just need to work it backwards and forwards to blend it over the metallic eyeshadows. But then once you blend it in, the metallic kind of comes through and it gives it this really beautiful, slightly softer black, and you can almost see this kind of blue shimmer coming through. And then use what's left on your bristles to pull the colour up and out slightly so you get a bit of a wing, but it's a very soft smoky wing. And then you can also use that to keep it very close to the root of your eyelashes as you come towards the centre of your lid. You can see where we've tight lined on the inner corner of the eyes, so you don't need to bring this colour towards the inner corner of the eye on the top of the lid. Before I apply any mascara, I'm applying these Ardell Double Wispies number 113 eyelashes. They are super long, but because they're not super thick, they don't disguise the beautiful eyeshadow that we've got on. But because they are quite long, they are relatively straight. So I'm just going to give them a little pinch with my Kevyn Aucoin eyelash curlers. I'm doing this quite softly and I'm walking the curlers down the length of the lashes just to give them the right kind of curl so they don't just sit bolt upright. Now I'm going in with some mascara. This one is the Bobbi Brown Smoky Eyelash Mascara. You'll see I'm mostly keeping this at the root just to coat my natural lashes, just to hide any kind of shimmer that's fallen down onto them, but it also seals my natural lashes with the falsies, but we don't need to apply any mascara to the length of these because they're already very long. That eye makeup is so pretty! Not one I'd normally go for, but it's kind of like a flip. So you've got a little bit of a smoke, a little bit of that kind of rose quartz feel into it, but with a bit of a purple vibe. So I am going to brighten underneath the eyes just a little bit. I'm going to take the AU Under Eye Concealer. I spoke about this a while ago. It is definitely one of my favourites, especially for when you are keeping the skin more natural. It does get a little bit messy though. So I'm going to pop a little bit of this just under the eyes really lightly. I'm going to take a fluffy blending brush. This one is the 145 Concealer Blender by ZOEVA. I tend to use this one for powder, but it is nice for blending concealer because it is a synthetic bristle brush, which works better with creams because it doesn't clog the bristles. Very lightly underneath the eyes. You can see it's super natural, doesn't add any kind of cakiness to the skin. If you followed me for years, you'll know I always used to use this brush. I don't even think it's got a name anymore. This one was from Crown Brush and I used to love it. I love that it's so little. You can get right into the inner corner of the eyes with this. So I'm going to tap off the excess product. And I'm not going over the eyeshadow, but I'm going to brighten around it because this is the area for me that sinks in a little bit. Now I'm getting older. And I just want to brighten it a little bit. Hard to manoeuvre around these huge eyelashes, which I absolutely adore for a night out. I rarely go out where I need something so dramatic, but they're dramatic in the respect that they're not thick, they're super wispy, but they're just extremely long. But because I've got quite a lot of lid, I can get away with it. I know they're not for everybody, but if you've got lid space, rock them because they are so beautiful. To add a little bit of contour to the skin, I'm going in with this iconic Precision Duo contour pot. The top element is a powder, but it's like a powder cream, and underneath is an actual cream. But I tend to find that the powder is kind of creamy enough on its own, so I don't tend to reach for this one too much. So the powder's on this finger and the cream's on this one. You can see the difference. The powder's a little bit more intense. Don't know if you can see, but so I'm going to add a small amount of the contour just down the sides of my nose to bring a bit of definition. Because we've got foundation on there, you just lose a little bit of the shadow that adds shape to the nose. So we're going to put that in. We'll leave it quite harsh for the moment. The brush I'm using is by ZOEVA. Another one that's completely worn off. I'm sure it's 137 Detailer brush. Just a little bit around the front. So it doesn't look like we've got two stripes down the sides of our nose, but it adds a little bit more definition back in. So it looks more like a shadow rather than makeup. And that's going into the hollows of the cheeks. Very lightly buff it in and then use a stipple motion to press it into the foundation. They're lovely little pots because they're so small. You can just pop them into your makeup bag. There's a little mirror in them. Really handy. I'm going to add a small amount just here and then I'm going to go in with some bronzer to warm up the skin. I've not reached for the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush bronzer for a little while, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to use quite a big brush for this. This is the Diego Della Palma number 30 brush. We're going to go in a 3 shape like this. So around the side of the forehead, onto the cheekbones, and then down. A little bit on the bridge of the nose. Don't forget your ears. And then if you've got your hair up like I have, go behind your ears. Because that area doesn't get a lot of sun unless you wear your hair up in the summer a lot. I'm going to take a small amount of my La Mer pressed powder. And I'm taking that in the shade Light, just through the centre. So I've had this on just a short while now, but I always get a little bit oily through the centre. On my cheeks, I'm going to use a little bit of this Diego Della Palma blush in the shade number 26. Just to add a little bit flush to the cheeks. With the Rose Quartz palette, I also received the Silk Balm. I used to have this ages ago. This is in the shade Love Stone. So pretty. This is one of those colours that kind of don't pick up on camera. You just can't really see it. But I want to keep the lips super natural because the eyes are played up. This has that kind of shimmer to it, so it's still pretty. You can of course go in with a lip liner first. So that concludes today's makeup look. I hope you've enjoyed it. I really like it. The palette is so beautiful. I'm really quite enjoying it. As always, I will list and link all the products I've used in the description bar for whether you are in the US, the UK, EU. Hopefully you can all shop. Please come follow me outside of YouTube over on Instagram. If you've got any suggestions for tutorials, leave them in the comment section. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe, give this tutorial a thumbs up, and I will see you in the week. Bye guys.